So we're going to start by working the state fair budget. Do we have any questions from the committee? We got time. Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would go ahead and recommend we pass out the Kansas State Fair budget favorably.
Okay. Those in favor say aye. Oh,
Aye.
opposed, same. The motion's passed, and that's state fair's done. Okay. I think we're going to move on to the citizens utility ratepayer board. Victoria.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be presenting from the Citizens Utility Ratepayer Board document in front of you on white paper. And the first thing I would want to point out about the Citizens Utility Ratepayer Board, or CURB, is it entirely fee funded, so no state general fund monies for this agency. And I'll move straight to page 5 in that document. On page 5, looking at the agency estimate, the agency estimates revised expenditures of $1.1 million, all from special revenue funds, which is an increase of about $99,000 above the fiscal year 2022 approved amount. And the entirety of that increase is due to the agency being authorized to carry over unspent consultant services funds between fiscal years. The agency utilizes engineers, economists, and technical experts during rate cases and other cases, so that in order to ensure that they have enough funding to cover those cases, they are allowed to carry over funding between fiscal years. And at the bottom of page 5, the governor concurs with the agency's fiscal year 2022 revised estimate. And I'll move straight to fiscal year 2023 on page 7. On page 7, looking at the agency request requests $1.2 million for fiscal year 2023. This is an all funds increase of about $90,000 above the fiscal year 2022 revised estimate. And that increase is due to a couple of enhancement requests that the agency has. So that first enhancement request is for an attorney position. The agency notes that with the increased number of cases filed and the increased complexity of those cases, there's a need for an additional attorney. The increase is also caused by that second enhancement request. That's item number 2 on page 7. An accountant position for similar reasons, with the increasing number of cases and the increasing complexity of those cases, the agency would like to hire an in-house accountant rather than using a consultant. And at the bottom of page 7, the governor concurs with the agency's fiscal year 2023 request. And Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for questions on CURB's budget.
Committee, any questions? Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The increase in all for an in-house, will that decrease on the contractual services then?
It should. I would say their contractual services do depend on the amount of cases that they're involved in, so I won't guarantee, but if they bring in the accountant, then it should assist in decreasing their consultant services, yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Committee? Good job, Victoria. Next, we have David Nicol. David, the room is yours.
Mr. Chair, is this blue? Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is David Nicol. I'm Consumer Counsel with the Citizens Utility Ratepayer Board, as known as CURB. It's always a pleasure to be able to speak to this committee, and thank you for what you do for the state of Kansas. A year ago, we were suffering through very cold temperatures, and for about 10 days below zero. Right now, you can walk around without a coat outside. What a difference a year makes. We hope we don't see days like that anytime soon. For those who don't know CURB, and you probably all do, but we're a very small agency. We're consisting of about 7 staff members at this point, with a budget that's been running somewhere in the neighborhood of about $1 million. We represent or advocate for residential and small commercial ratepayers before the KCC, before the Kansas Legislature, and before the Kansas courts. Most of our work is centered around working before the KCC. With regard to our PBB, performance-based budgeting, I'm going to turn your attention to pages, I believe, 6 through 9 of that report. That's our 3-year comparison, just to show how we're performing in our various cases. So on KCC rate cases, so those are cases that the utilities file to increase their rates. We have a 100% participation rate. That means if a rate case is filed, we're intervening in that case and we're active, and we've been that way forever. But certainly during the last 3 years, we have been. Savings vary over time, but in the 3-year period from 2019 to fiscal year 2021, we've saved an average of $90 million for ratepayers in these rate cases. So relative to our budget, we believe we show real value. There are also KCC tariff cases, such as electric vehicle cases, cases having to do with energy efficiency and the like, that we also intervene in. Those cases we measure from the standpoint of what it would cost to source this out to a private firm versus state firm. And again, we intervene in 98.5% of those cases. If you look at the savings at that, an average is $336,500 per on an average annual savings. On Legislature, we look at all utility bills, we analyze whatever's been filed, and then we generally speak or have proposals with regard to about half of those on an average. And then one of the most important aspects of our job, and one that we want to increase, is our outreach program. We want to be able to reach out to consumers and talk about matters that which they can save utilities, answer questions that they have with regard to utility bills, help low-income consumers and the like. So our outreach program, we spend some time on, and over the average, it's been about 40 ratepayers that we interact with on an annual basis. So I would like to now turn the attention of the committee basically to the very end of this document, starting at page 15. And I want to talk about the savings that we've obtained for the ratepayer just this first half of fiscal year 2022. In this first half of fiscal year 2022, we have handled a number of Winter Storm Uri cases, 2 of which have wound up. In these cases, we've saved the ratepayer in these two Winter Storm Uri cases $62 million. We've had one rate case, a Black Hills rate case, during fiscal year 2022, and in that case, we saved the ratepayer about $3.5 million. So again, in 2022, we're continuing to add value in terms of our work on behalf of residential and small commercial ratepayers. But I'd like to, I had Ms. Potts deliver to you an order from the commission having to do with the Sustainability Transformation Plan that was filed by Evergy. You recall that situation. Elliott Management is an active investor that brought to Evergy the proposition that they needed to increase their sales prices above even what the KCC was granting them. Everybody was troubled by that, frankly. Activist investors are somewhat of a pariah to most firms on Wall Street. No surprise, it would also not met well with us. So on page 4 of that order, it recites what the position that CURB took with regard to that. And just to summarize what that says, paragraph 8 is that we were very concerned that the emphasis on rates would be ignored for the possibility of increasing shareholder profits, and we expressed that. We knew this was only an informational hearing, and so we brought that to the attention of the commission. But we said we need some guidelines. You need to tell Evergy what they need to do. And turning again to this order, starting on page 12, and we're proud of this. It says the commission agrees with CURB's description of the purpose of this docket, and it goes on. The commission finds its traditional rate-making approach affording management direction to the utility with and after the fact prudence and cost recovery review will be most protective of consumers in this situation, which was our position. As CURB suggests, it is appropriate for the commission to offer general guidelines before Evergy files its next rate case. So we were spot on, frankly, on this particular docket, and the commission called us out for it. We're proud of that. I also wanted to turn your attention to a paper that we're working on. Now, I only gave you the first 10 pages of it. It's Energy Efficiency, a study of best practices and policies. One of the things that we believe that we can add value to as a state agency is working on best practices. We belong to a National Association of State Consumer Advocates, consisting of consumer advocates across the 50 states. And the District of Columbia. And by virtue of that, by virtue of our study, we're in a unique position where we can really advise legislators, policymakers, the KCC as to best practices in utility matters. And we hope to be able to continue that work. So that's a little bit of what CURB's been doing this last fiscal year. We have asked, as Ms. Potts indicated, we have asked for an additional attorney and we've asked for an additional accountant. Part of that is the fact, and one of the representatives alluded to it, is offsetting our consultant cost, and we hope to be able to do that. The true fact of the matter is that over time we're going to lose those consultants anyway. Every time I go to the National Association, the NASUCA, National Association of State Consumer Advocates, the number one question everybody asks is, does anybody know where some consultants we can pick them up? Because there's a dearth of them. There aren't very many out there. And that's a time that I always kind of look at my toes. I'm always afraid to raise my hand and say, well, we've got one, because I'm afraid they're gonna take that consultant that we have out. So it's always a fear that at some point or the other we may no longer have those consultants. But as we gain expertise in the fields of utility economics, utility accounting and the like, we can displace those. And that would be the best of all worlds because it gives us a continuity of our own. We're in the enviable position that learning utility economics, learning utility regulatory practices is a very steep curve. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 5 years to learn it. And even at 5 years, you're not completely comfortable with where you are. On top of that, once you get to be really good at what you do, the utilities pick you up. You're primed for poaching because you've been trained, you're educated, you know the issues, and there just aren't that many attorneys and accountants out there that really understand the utility trade. So it's very easy to pick somebody out once they've been trained. The third almost nail in the coffin is the fact that it's difficult to find somebody that's interested in working in the utility trade. It's not probably the most glamorous thing in the world. And so consequently, you're looking and you're reaching. In fact, I can tell you that the KCC was looking to hire a KCC attorney. They couldn't find any. And we actually were about to lose one of our attorneys who came in and said, I've been given a better offer to work for somebody else, and I had to meet that. The alternative was simply this: we go back to square one. We don't have anybody that's educated in that area, and we suffer as a result of that. I've done that twice. I've been here 6 years, and 2 times I've had to rebuild staff from scratch. And due to the fact that somebody else has hired them out from under us. And so we'd like that continuity. We'd like to build expertise. We'd like to do a whole lot more with regard to outreach, reaching out to consumers, we handle about 127 cases, KCC cases a year, at least in fiscal year of 2021. That means we can't spend the type of time with a very small staff, or if we lose staff, on those type of cases. We add value when we're involved in those cases and clearly can't if we're not. So that's the reason for our budget increase. It does look like it's fairly large, but we're just a small agency. So any increase, when you go from one staff to two staff, it's a 100% increase. It's still a large increase. But the value that we provide to our consumers, to our constituents, we believe outweighs that by many folds. So I hope that's answered any of the questions that you might have, but I'll stand here and answer any more that you may have.
Could you explain the fees that you obtain and offer, how you fund your agency?
We're completely fee funded, and those fee funds come from the utilities, which are spread upon utility bills, but they're very, very, very small. I mean, relative to the cost that this agency costs, the cost of this agency is smaller, frankly, than the rate cases, the cost of the rate cases that are presented by the utilities and the KC staff by themselves. I mean, so when you have a rate case, for example, you're probably talking somewhere close to about $1 million worth of fees. That's our entire budget. So it's a very, very small increase in terms of that, and we think commensurately we've saved the ratepayers a whole bunch of money. So does that? I'm sorry, Representative. I hope I've answered the question.
It's just the ratepayers overall.
Just the ratepayers overall.
Right.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Any questions, committee? Representative?
Thank you. I thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm curious if there's anything that we can do as a state in the way of helping you train or find trained employees. Is there a course that the universities could offer or do offer? Is there a specialty that we need to work with somewhere to help them be ready to do this kind of work?
That's an excellent question, Representative. I think it's a great start. Maybe we could reach out to the various universities. I know Washburn University has a energy law. I want to say practicum. I'm not sure what the right word is. Internship of some sort, and that might be an avenue to at least bring in lawyers along those lines. As far as accountants and the like, I don't know exactly how we do that with the universities, but I think it's a great concept. I just haven't explored it.
Perhaps even just a conversation with someone at the Board of Regents, to say this is an issue for you. Is there anything they can do to help? You could reach out to them, but if there's something that we can do that you think of, let us know. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And why we're on that particular topic of help from legislatures, one of the things we would really like to be able to do is have a better outreach program. And those are things that we would love to be able to come out and visit with each of you and talk about how we could reach your constituents in a better manner. If you ask somebody on the street, you went back home to your constituents, we just visit with CURB, and they'll look at like, what CURB? Huh? They won't know who CURB is. We think at some point or the other, we ought to. One of the things that we managed to do, I've gone too long, I'm sorry about that. But during this STP hearing, we reached out to AARP and managed to talk to them on their radio program called Coffee Clatch, I believe is what it's. And so we had an opportunity to reach out to all these consumers and tell them about that. I'd love to continue that type of work. I think it's the type of work that CURB should be doing. We just need the manpower to be able to do it.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. On the carryover funds, that's enough to partially fund the extra 2 FTEs, but what are you going to do for the years ahead of us to help keep funding those extra FTEs?
Yeah. Those funds, those carryover funds will clearly probably go away at some point, probably in 2023, and our budget will increase a little bit. I understood your question, Representative. I'm not sure if I did.
Well, will you have to increase the rate that the ratepayers are paying, so you have more funds coming in to make those extra salaries and wages?
It'd be a very small increase, but a small increase. And we will look to see where we are in terms of the carryover budget versus where we are in terms of what we're using on a consistent basis. So we won't continue to have that carryover, or we'll utilize that carryover and reduce our contractual budget to make it more even. And then we hope over time, Representative, that we'll be able to handle most, if not all, cases by ourselves. There are some we can't. Like, for example, energy efficiency is one that's come up fairly recently. We can come in and probably testify kind of parochially about it, but we really need somebody that's going to come in and talk more nationally. So we've hired a firm called Synapse, which is out of Boston, which studies best practices in energy efficiency. That's what they do. That's their main calling. And so we can add value, but when you have somebody that has that expertise, you really want to use them. So we can't say it all go away, but we certainly want to make sure we carry the cases that we can.
All right, thank you.
Representative Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. And I love a fella who can sport a pink tie. That is a good first step. So quick question for you, just because I apologize. I'm just learning all of these things in the legislature, and there's a few pieces to put together. So can you just tell me how this is relates to some of those smaller utility companies back home, like Lane Scott Electric, for instance? How does your agency deal with them, or some of the other smaller electric companies back home?
We have an indirect kind of interaction with some of their customers. We may get calls from somebody from Butler County REC or Lane County or Arch Valley that's upset with where they are. They're upset with their rates. They're upset with their practice. Now, the KCC does not have authority by legislative act not to regulate those RECs, nor does CURB. So we really can't get in. But one of the things that we've become involved with in working with KCC, our counterpart at Public Affairs and Consumer Complaints, is to take those calls and make a note of them. And the purpose for that involvement is because if we start to see, let's say, a pattern of something that's abusive, then we will report to the legislature. We'll come in and say, Ag Committee, please let me tell you about what's going on in Lane County. We've had a number of complaints from consumers in that county, and we think we need some type of legislative fix. But we can't directly interfere with that. We don't have statutory authority. But we can at least advise this committee, advise the legislature as to what we're seeing. We're not seeing a lot of those types of complaints. What we've seen really is a lot of people complaining about Winter Storm Uri and their cost, and the like. So that's where we're seeing most of our calls at this point. A lot of people very alarmed at what their prices were going to look like after Winter Storm Uri. So that's been a lot of our calls recently.
So you don't have one committee that obviously we're doing your budget, but you don't have one committee that you go to talk about the complaints, the utilities committee, right?
Utilities, right?
Yeah. Okay.
House and Senate.
Well, you mentioned ag, so then you threw me off. I was like, what? Okay. So you have one committee that you usually report to say, hey, here's some issues we're having. Can y'all fix this? Okay.
Thank you.
Committee, I've got a couple of questions before you get out of here. So how many attorneys do you have when the dust settles for 22?
We have two and me. I'm an attorney by trade, but I really should be spending most of my time administering. And that's so effectively we have two full-time attorneys presently.
And then do you kind of keep track of consumer interactions, like you keep like a click, or how many times you have kind of a number for the year? Or
we do, and it's placed in our PBB.
Okay.
And you'll see that at on page 9 of 21, I believe, talks about complaints. Anytime we get a complaint, we field that call. It's absolutely imperative. Anytime we get a call, we field it, and we help the people that do want to file a complaint actually file a complaint in legal form, so it does actually get before the commission. There's keywords that you need to put in a complaint to be able to get past to make a prima facie case, and we help consumers get to that point. A normal consumer is not going to understand the legalese that's encountered in a complaint. The process by which complaints go through, so you know, is that they will go to the KCC first. That's the protocol. They will work through the KCC. If the KCC can't informally resolve their matter, they will send it to us and say, here is a complaint. Do you want to handle it? Of course we do. And so we will visit with the whoever the complainant may be and attempt to help them file a complaint if that's what they want to do. Some cases they do, in some cases they look at it and they kind of tire the process and let it go. So, but that's something we do try to do. We by legal ethics, we cannot go in and represent any particular consumer. I've visited with Katie Baird up at the disciplinary administrator's office. She says you have to have a limited engagement. And that limited engagement is you help them get it on file, and then you say, "I'm sorry, but good luck. Go hire an attorney."
So, committee, any other questions? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, and I'm so sorry if you had said this, I might have missed it. How many, so obviously there's price gouging last year. I'm sure you had an influx of phone calls. How many cases then did you have? And is there a win and loss, or is there, I mean, what's the outcome? Is it, hey, yeah, the electric company gets their hand slapped, or the whatever utility company gets their hand slapped? Is there a financial award, or like what does winning look like? And how many of those cases did you have last year? Since obviously was a lot of gouging.
We actually in Winter Uri, our jurisdiction only pertains to the distribution utility. So we had KGS, we had Atmos, we had Black Hills, we had Southern Pioneer, we had Evergy, and we had a small company called American Energies. Those the inquiry in those is limited to whether or not the gas that they acquired, or the energy in the case of Evergy, they acquired was prudently acquired. In other words, did you go out and you bought the best you could? Did you pay attention? Were you within reasonable practices of maintaining and getting that energy? It's important to note that every utility in the whole Midwest region ended up with high prices. There wasn't one that didn't. And the truth of the matter is that prices went, natural gas prices, and you hit the key term representatively, prices went from $380 to $600 per MCF. In Oklahoma, it was $1,000. And I find it really hard to believe that cost increased that much and then went back down that much. Now, I do know that there was a real shortage of natural gas. And in fact, some utilities, frankly, could not get gas. There were some marketers that simply could not get gas. Texas lost, because of their energy shortage, lost 130 some odd people as a result of that. To the credit of our utilities and to the credit of our commission, we didn't lose anybody. Our pipes, for the most part, didn't have any busted pipes. We didn't have any damage to buildings. The AG's office and the FERC are empowered to go after anybody that profiteered through this. It is out of our hands. We don't have the authority to do so. Federal law says so. And so consequently, any money that's recovered in terms of profiteering will go strictly back to the consumer. That just hasn't occurred yet. That investigation hasn't wrapped up.
So those companies that you mentioned earlier, Atmos, Evergy, those were not your clients. Though your client is the consumers, right? So, and so so the Attorney General then is the enforcement arm of that.
The Attorney General has the Kansas Consumer Protection Act. And under that Kansas Consumer Protection Act, there is a provision that says that you cannot increase prices above a certain amount during during an emergency without some type of due cause. And that's something that the AG's office will look into. long line of cases from the United States Supreme Court that says KCC and conversely and consequently CURB has no authority to interfere with federal prices, and these are federal prices. Interstate gas and interstate commerce is interstate commerce, and the courts have been very clear, going all the way back to a Northern Natural Gas case versus KCC, saying you don't have authority to enter into those types of matters.
Last follow up, Mr. Chair. Thank you. So when you win for the consumer, what does that look like? Who?
The first win that we've got in terms of these cases to reduce the carrying cost of these, and we've got to thank the legislature last year for passing the Securitization Act, because that allows these costs to be carried at a very low percentile, like somewhere below 2. And that's going to save consumers a lot of money. But we're able to leverage that as an agency, along with other stakeholders, to get that carrying cost until we get securitization at a much lower rate than the weighted average cost of capital. So we save money by getting those carrying costs reduced. That's what our win looks like. Now, if the AG's office is able to disgorge profiteering, that will result in money coming back to the consumer, and that's what that win will look like.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, committee.
Thank you.
Quickly, Mr. Chairman. Just quickly, Mr. Chairman. That was Representative Lee. Thank you, David, for presenting. What he's stating is actually right on the money, that the gouging will go through the AG's office. And the way I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, David, but the AG has an RFP out trying to hire someone to go in or take that on to look at price gouging. As far as I know, nothing's been done, but an RFP is sitting out there, and we're trying to find the right person to proceed with that.
Representative Gartner, you're absolutely right. But I do want to add one thing, if I could, on that, and that the AG's office was actively involved in these dockets, and did, I've met the assistant attorney generals, attorneys general, and they're top-notch lawyers. And I have every reason to believe that they'll do their absolute best to get that money back for Kansas if it's at all possible.
Last chance. Committee, any questions? David, great job, and thank you for coming.
And I'll remember a few times next to
I'm telling you. So next, we're going to work the Department of Commerce budget. You have anything, Victoria? Nothing. So, this is I don't know if you've looked at this. This is a pretty huge budget, and I want you just to take a little time and think about it. See if you have anything you want to talk about, and we're open for questions.
I have a question.
Okay.
So yesterday I was talking to the chairwoman of the Education Committee, and I asked her about that huge increase from, I think it was, I don't have it in front of me, contractual services that had gone from like 14 million to 209 million. And then if we looked, it was coming from SGF, and it was like 195 million. I'm sure you all remember because it gave me a lot of heartburn that day. 195 million, and it was the universities. And so I asked her about that, and she goes, well, those should be coming from Spark funds. I said, pretty sure it's SGF. But I just wanted to confirm that I was correct, because I'm still not always very comfortable with understanding how all these budgets work. So is correct that 195 million, and maybe I should be asking you, 195 million is coming from SGF instead of any sort of federal funding? I mean, I remember there's the 1-to-1 match, but that's outside of the 195 million. Is that correct, sir?
That's all right. I was going to try to answer from the table, but that's all right. I understand. So yeah, it is state general fund dollars. That's not Spark fund dollars in order to be able to do that.
So do we know any sort of historical, has that ever happened before? I mean, is this the first time we've had such a drastic increase like that for contractual services?
So I don't think it's in contractual services, which is, that doesn't matter. I mean, it's, all right, not a problem. I don't think it's in contractual services, but I think it's in aid to locals or other assistance, but
The budget as a whole.
it's just a new program. And it's not the first time I've seen a new program of this sort that has these types of large effects. When the Rural Prosperity Program came in effect, I mean, there was a large increase, and that one was from EDIF in that case.
What's that? EDIF.
The
Sorry.
Economic Development Initiatives Fund, which is one of the primary funding sources for the Department of Commerce.
Okay.
However, but you're right. No, it is a very substantial increase.
So I don't know what the protocol is, so you can chastise me. I don't know if I ask him or y'all or, I mean, so do we have to approve that?
Anything, it's America here in this committee. You can ask anything you want, cut anything you want, or add anything you want. So if you can get it passed. So what
Okay.
would you like to do?
Well, Representative Newland is wanting to chat, I think. Okay, perfect.
Representative Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to go ahead and make a recommendation that we pass out the Commerce Department's budget as presented.
It's moved and seconded that we pass out the Commerce Committee meeting, but we'll open it up for questions or debate here in just a minute.
Is there any discussion?
I think we're on a bit of a recess, huh? Hey, yeah, I think he said just a minute. I think he said stand at ease.
Mr. Chairman, if it's all right, well, now you're back, but there was a question about the Kansas agritourism budget and how those monies were spent at the previous meeting. They have provided some background information if you'd like me to pass it out to the committee on agritourism.
I see that passed out, but the point was they were supposed to be here in person to talk about that. But you can pass out what you got. That's okay.
Mr. Chairman, we do have a representative from the Department of Commerce present as well. All right. Okay.
You can ask anybody anything. Yep.
Good.
Yes.
We're working it today, and we've
Yes.
already had them here. This one, I told you we were gonna need more in a day.
I know. Well, we tried that.
If you let them help, that's good, yeah.
We got snowed out. Representative, you can ask Commerce. We have a person in the room. You can ask them anything you'd like. So she gets 69,000. What would that be?
Good afternoon, committee. I'm Sherry Renfro, Chief Fiscal Officer at Commerce. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
I don't know, it's maybe what the question was the other day was why the increase in that, or in the tourism budget. But I realized it was because we moved it into, I know why, Baker. No, we moved it into, and you didn't have it before, and I've read in our budget, and I don't have it right in front of me right now, but there is a description in the budget of why, if you want to get us on that page. It is in the budget when we describe the program.
If you look at the handout, is that what you're talking about, Cindy? I mean, Sydney?
No, I'm talking about what's in here, that original document. There is a description of why that money was added, but I can look at this now. I haven't seen it before. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Okay. Representative Does anybody have any questions? We've all got questions. Who would like to be first? Representative Lee?
Well, I'm super thankful for this fact sheet. Thank you for bringing this. And I hope that you had a chance to look up Shop Kansas Farms on the Facebook page.
Can you hear me? I did very briefly, and it's a very interesting page. And the tourism department is very familiar with that Facebook group, and I thought it was very interesting. I had never heard of it before.
Yeah,
so thank you.
Yes, and I do appreciate this. It is this is great. So, is this the appropriate time then for me to make a motion? Can I make a motion about the budget, or are we just in the question?
So we can.
I don't think it was seconded, and I think he was.
Yeah, she seconded.
But you can make a motion.
Making a motion to amend it.
So, okay, so
May I respond to her?
just wait. Okay. You can make an amendment to the budget like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, you can. You can make it. This will be an amendment to the budget to pass it out. Same thing. It's just an amendment. You're
So I make a motion. I move that we strike the 195 enhancement piece of the budget. I can do that.
Yes.
Great. I need a second on that.
just a minute. I'm going to have you explain what we're doing. What it
Okay.
is.
Yeah, because we just went from agritourism.
So, Mr. Chairman, that is in fiscal year 2023, and I'm just going to assume we're going to work 22 and 23 at the same time. And you can see some additional detail on that on the bottom of page 10, just some short detail. And as part of the governor's recommendation on page 12. And that adds, and it's on page 12, it's item 27. So it adds 195 million all SGF for university grant projects for 23. Like I said, it mentions it has a 1-to-1 match requirement, and that 20 million of the 195 million would be dedicated to NIAR, which is the National Institute for Aviation Research. In addition to that, the agency has also passed out this form that talks about the university challenge grants. So that's what this is as well. It's sort of background information on that 195. And honestly, that is about the limit of the detail I personally have. I haven't even actually had a chance to read this document yet. So I would defer any further questions to the agency if you wanted to ask the agency questions about
Just for
those.
maybe procedure. What if someone does want to work, say the 195, can they be more earmarked on what they want to do, and or they just take the whole thing out? That's the question. You know what I'm saying?
Chairman, you can make any adjustment that you like. So, I mean, if you wanted to change the 195 to 150 or 100, or you wanted to increase the amount earmarked from 20 to 40, I can share with you that in Senate Commerce, there was discussions about increasing the amount of the earmark for NIAR, although that has not actually passed out. It was announced in open committee, so I can talk about that fact. So I will slow down. But yes, absolutely. You can make that adjustment however you like. You could add things. You could put things into the budget that aren't even on this piece of paper, if that's what you want to do.
I have a question, and maybe we'll start with you, Mr. Dare. Somewhere in this budget, I believe there was a deal for Wichita for aviation, maybe okay. So if what she's talking about, would that take that out now?
Yes, sir, it would. So if you were to delete the 195 completely, that would remove the funding from NIAR or the National Institute for Aviation Research in Wichita.
That's what I wanted to know for now. Don't leave. Just don't leave.
I'm not going to.
So we have a motion, right, Victoria?
There's no second.
We have a second.
No.
Yes, we do.
Okay, garbage.
We have a second. And we have more discussion.
Mr. Chair.
Uh,
I would like to make
yes.
Let me try to make some sense out of this for me. If we go back to the 195 million, if we go to the 195 million, on page, what was that, Dylan?
Well,
12. So the 195 million for grant projects, that, the way I understand, and maybe someone from Commerce could address the specifics, but it's a matching grant program. And is that your university challenge grant handout that says basically that money's going to be utilized by universities? They're going to go out and put together recommendations to one per university, if I read it correctly. They're going to send that to Commerce, up to Commerce. They're going to decide the economic benefit of that particular project. And then the universities are going to have a 50% matching grant. So if I have an idea and I'm at KU and I want 20 million, it's going to cost 20. I'm going to use 20 million and I'm going to get 20 million in a matching grant. So that 40 million goes to the Secretary of Commerce, who then either looks at the economic viability of that project and then awards those projects accordingly. So that's sort of a quick summary.
okay, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to add to that, the total 195 million, if I understand it right, there's not a time limit on that, or is it just for a year?
Thank you. That would be a one-time grant payment. So it's for fiscal year 23 only that we're going to have the 195 million to Commerce, and then we're going to grant it out. And this is a one-time grant award.
Granted before 24.
That I don't know the specifics of.
That's one of the questions I've had. Another question I have then is that it's my understanding that Wichita State is also able to compete for other money in that pot. The NIAR money is just on top of really what we're really offering for the universities to compete with each other on is the 175 million.
Correct. So it'd be
20
one.
million's
Correct.
out of it.
Correct.
So
And actually, yes, if I may go back to your
Yes.
previous question, it looks like the awards will be announced in fiscal year 23.
in 20
That's the plan.
get their act together, come up with a project that is going to make sense to the people in economic development in Commerce. It has to meet all the criteria that we have to meet for any kind of project that you all do. And the fact that Wichita State is singled out, I wanted to be sure we all understand, they can still compete in the 175 million that's still there. They have their, they can offer a project. It may be that all the universities, all 6 regions get some money. It may be that they don't all compete. Is that correct?
Correct. So the 20 million is just for the hangar specifically, and then the rest would be awarded for the grants for the universities.
Thank you. That was my 2 main questions right now.
Does anybody in the room want to have any comment on this? Anybody?
I can talk about Wichita State program.
Well, let's see what shed some light.
Yeah.
And make sure you identify yourself.
Andy Schlapp, Executive Director of Government Relations and Strategy from Wichita State University. So the project that's before you, the $20 million project, was currently what we're having, and I'll try to be as brief as I can. Here's what's happening in the aviation industry right now. There are, what's that? Can you not hear me? Man, you missed some really good stuff too. I'm sorry about that. So what's happening in the aviation industry is because of the way with COVID and international travel and the fuel efficiency of these new aircraft, they're moving to smaller aircraft. So the 737, the Airbus A320 are going to be the workhorses of moving internationally. So the 767s come out of commercial service. The 757 is coming out of commercial service, and currently the 777 is being removed from commercial service. So currently there's between 200 and 400 of those aircraft sitting right now in the desert in Phoenix and Nevada, and they're looking for other uses of it. The other thing that's happened during this time is that people are ordering online, so the need for freight is growing exponentially. So you need larger aircraft and so forth. So there's a big worldwide competition right now of where the MRO is going to sit. Is it going to sit in Kansas? Is it going to sit in Oklahoma? Is it going to sit in Washington? Is it going to sit in California? Is it going to sit in Turkey or Israel? Right now, the two homes for MROs are in California and Israel. Wichita State, or Wichita, has the infrastructure to do this. From when Boeing left, they were doing all the MRO work for the tanker, right, the KC-46, and those need to be upgraded and enhanced to handle the 777. If we can build that infrastructure here in Kansas and have that here, and that infrastructure would be built in Wichita, Topeka, and Salina, and we could do 8 aircraft every 6 months, so 16 a year, 200 to 400 aircraft, it's about 10 or 20 years worth of work. It's 1,000 employees. We've already have 500 working on this. This infrastructure would allow Kansas to become the MRO capital of the world, and you would be getting additional work, right? So we're doing that with the DoD, with the Black Hawk helicopters. We're doing some 737, some MD-80s. I'm not supposed to say anything. We just got back from a country that wants us to do it for them, and it's 40 aircraft. As soon as this is built, we'll go. The important thing for Kansas to understand is this is a big deal. These are high-paying jobs that can be here located throughout the state with this investment in infrastructure. The best news is if you invest in this infrastructure, it's owned by the state of Kansas, Wichita State, and it stays here. We never lose that infrastructure. Companies may come and go, infrastructure stays. So what I would ask is that you keep that $20 million in there that the governor did. We also have been working to add Salina to that as well, because I seriously was on the phone, that's why I was late, about we need to get going now. So I'm not, whatever you guys decide is great, but there's a tremendous need for this. So I would ask, honestly, while I'm here, yes, keep that 20 million in, but raise that to 35.
Question for him.
To 35, an additional 15 million. That brings Salina online, and they can then have 2 777 lines there as well.
Okay, Mr. Slapp, but the 15 million more you'd like to have, you can get out of the 175 million.
Correct. Yeah, and what I'm hoping is
That's
you would
what-
make a motion to increase that to 35.
Well, I would suggest that you need to utilize your share of that, but perhaps you have other great ideas for something in there. But yeah, I
Yeah, to me,
certainly
right-
support what you're doing there.
Yeah.
It sounds, what's an MRO?
I'm sorry.
I tried.
Oh, come on. No. I always have to go back and look too. I forget all the time. It's maintenance, rehab, and overhaul.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
makes sense.
And it's the largest, fastest growing area in the aviation sector right now. And I would just argue that the sooner these are built, the sooner we can get going on bringing those jobs here.
Air freight, what we did at Fort Riley when we put the new railhead in and can deploy everybody clear around the world from there.
Yeah.
Those kinds of projects are things that you and I don't see every day, but they're out there and people are doing them for us. That benefits not only our communities and impacts our communities, but the state and the world. That's a very exciting project. I didn't know what your 20 million was for.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hopefully 35.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Andy, thanks for being here. I read about this a couple weeks ago in the CAP Journal, and it's a tremendous opportunity that I think, and I would even say I think Topeka has a long enough runway or large enough runway that we could, and probably the structures out there at Forbes, the old Forbes Air Force Base, that we could even expand that. Salina, Wichita, Salina, possibly Topeka.
Topeka's not a possibility.
Oh, it's not?
Topeka's going to happen.
Oh,
But
okay.
we don't. So here's right. It's all about timing. It's how long it takes. These are, if you ever see a 777, 777 is huge. A 737 fuselage fits into the engine of a 777. That's how much larger the 777 is than a 737. There's only 4 runways in Kansas that can handle it. One's Eisenhower Airport, which we're not going to go there. It's McConnell, it's Salina, and it's Topeka. Because of what it's going to take to scale, building the hangars in Topeka today, we're not going to have the aircraft and the ability to do it. So what we've said is that will be online in 2 or 3 years, but because we'll be up and operational, this corporation, this nonprofit will be able to pay for Topeka. So we're not asking for Topeka money, right? If you wanted Topeka online today, you could put that money in, we could put it online. The question really becomes, are the aircraft going to be available at that time? Does that make sense? But no, Topeka is absolutely part of the project.
No, this is an opportunity for us, the way I see it. So with that, Mr. Chairman,
We just have more discussion.
We have got a motion on a second. We have more discussion.
Yeah. Just a couple questions for you. I am glad that you explained that to me because that is a great program and I would be supportive of that program. I'm not supportive of giving the Department of Commerce more money and also being rushed through to do it. We've already done that, I think, this week, one other time. And so I'm kind of over that aspect of it. I'm also, it seems like we give the schools a lot of money and a lot of federal money has been going to the schools, a lot of COVID funds, but I would be supportive of your program. Couple things. What is the, have you done any matching with any of the airline companies and those?
So we're not, right? So of the 20 million for the Wichita project, 16 million is going to come from private partners.
Is it 60 or 16?
16.
16
And
million.
for Salina, the 15 million we're asking for, it's going to be matched by the private sector of 11 million.
So 16 will be matched in Wichita,
Yep,
and then 15,
11 in Salina.
11 in Salina. Okay, so there is some buy-in from the private industry there.
Not only that, the private industry in Wichita said this is so important, they're actually paying people to go to work and paying for their school. So
Yeah.
every 6 months, 25 people are going into this program, getting a job right away, $25 an hour, going to school at night. In 3 years, they have an A&P mechanic certificate. And then their commitment is they have to work for that company for 2 more years. So that's how we're building the workforce.
Okay. So what's the governor's, she keeps talking about our surplus in Kansas right now. Is it 3 billion? Is that what it is? What's our surplus here in Kansas? 3 billion?
Can't answer it.
Yes. So, I guess, can we amend that motion? I like this program. I think we need to make sure that we can continue to strengthen our aviation industry in Wichita, especially because it's waned here in the last few years. I don't agree with the school piece of it. So can I amend my motion to keep the 40 million? Actually, I'd like to increase it actually to the 35 million, but get rid of all this other stuff, the matching stuff to the schools. Can I do that? Victoria, can I do that? Is it okay with the
You got
second?
1 second on. Yes, you can.
She said if it's okay with the second, right?
It's okay.
Thank you so much.
So, where are we at? Representative? They're asking for 20. You want to add 35.
When she changed it.
At 35, so I'm asking that we get rid of the 195 million minus the 35. I tell my husband I can't be cute and good at mental math. So perfect. 165. 60.
Okay. Let's discuss that a little bit to make sure we got our math right. So you want to do
She wants to. She made a motion. Strike 160 million.
We're cutting 160 million, but we're funding the aviation program. That's my motion.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to oppose this amendment. I don't have a problem with maybe going from 20 to 35 for the MROs or whatever it's called. But I want to keep that money in for a new project for the universities to expand their reach, to have economic development projects from those universities that will probably help the areas around the universities or the state. So I don't have a problem. We have in the past cut the Commerce Department to nothing. Their budgets, no wonder they didn't perform because they didn't have any personnel. They cut all their personnel. They had, they mismanaged that department. Now we have a clear projection and performances that they want to adopt, and that's why that money is there. And I will oppose this motion.
For just discussion. So, there's far more millions of dollars in this budget that you may want to look at other than fighting what this is. But the thing that I'd like to know, maybe for Victoria, what's their budget up? What's their budget up from last year? Mr. Deere.
So, Mr. Chairman, you can look at the change between 22 and 23, and the easiest way to do that would be look at the table on page 10. So the 22 revised estimate is 110.7. Now that's the agency revised estimate. That excludes some of the governor's recommendations, which total about $25 million. But then it goes to 339.6. Okay, so you're seeing an increase of about $230 million or so between FY22 and FY23.
I mean, that's a pretty big jump. I think that's, what is it? 60%? What is it?
300%, 200%.
I mean,
so, and most of that is that $195 million. So there's $195 million for the grants, and there's the $10 million for the other higher education grants, and there's enhancements totaling. I mean, the total enhancements and supplementals total $265.9 million.
Three times in 1 year is kind of a monster leap to me.
Do we know how much oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. So the economy in the state of Kansas is doing pretty well. Is that a safe statement to say as we look at these numbers? We've got the Commerce Department going. These budgets have been these numbers have been looked at in the Commerce Committee, I believe.
Are you referring to the Senate Commerce Committee?
House Commerce.
House Commerce.
Haven't they looked at some of these numbers?
Right. So there may have been some discussions about the policy programs that underlie those, but the budget is considered in this committee.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Representative.
On page 10, is there any federal money in this on page 10? Or is this all state general fund?
So there is a lot of federal money on this page.
That's my point, and I don't need to have you go through it all right now, but my point is, in about 2012, the agency was cut to the bone. And at that time, I kind of figured we were at 1909 funding for commerce. There was no money in it. And I don't know if you can find that in your work right there. But it was because of the tax cuts that we were doing, and we were taking $500 million every year out of our budget, just everywhere we can, and we really decimated commerce. And I have been so excited to see all the things that have been able to be done this year, just because we have an energetic group in there doing the work, and there's money that they can work with to make these companies interested in Kansas. Yesterday's was a big one, but we've had about 8 or 10 others all around the state this year. We're developing our economies, and we have come out of a time where the state wasn't able to do anything. I'm very much in support of the universities having an opportunity to spend money this way. And we're looking at 175 million for them, or 160, whatever it turns out. But it'll be matched, so that'll be 320, right? if it's spent, if they utilize it, if they have grants that are approved by the Department of Commerce, it'll be up to 320 or 300 and whatever million, because it's got to be matched.
Mr. Chairman, there is a 1-to-1 match requirement for those funds and new funds.
Just a quick one, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Representative Gardner.
Violent, how much of this money is one-time money? I mean, you can talk about numbers, but there is quite a bit of the revenue or the funds that we're showing is just one-time money versus ongoing.
Mr. Chairman, with permission, so my understanding is that the higher education grants of $10 million, that's one-time funding. The $195 million, that's the university grant funding projects that we've been talking about. That is one-time money. And if you want to look at these on page 13, some of these enhancements, the majority of these enhancements are ongoing. That moderate income housing program at this point is a one-time grant in 20. So at this point, it's a one-time $20 million SGF. So that's a one-time infusion. The $5 million in the Job Creation Program Fund, technically that's only a one-time, although it does increase to 27, which is ongoing in the out year. And there's an upgrade to the CRM system. That's a one-time upgrade as part of this budget.
What's
Contact management software, sales software.
Sales software. So that is in item 11.
On page 13.
Okay, cybersecurity. Okay, sure.
No, Salesforce.
They refer to it as customer relationship management software, and I've heard it called all kinds of different things. So that's what it is. But it is sales software.
Mr.
Donlin, is that EDIF, right?
It is EDIF.
Okay, that's a little different than SGF.
Not SGF.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have one more question, if you may. Thank you. So I'm just getting real tired of education spending all this money. I'm curious to know, since this is coming out of SGF, do you, and maybe y'all don't know this off the top of your head, and I apologize if you don't, how much COVID money have these universities, these same universities that are going to be getting this $195 million, or how much COVID money have they gotten in the last year, 2 years?
Mr. Chairman, that is information we have. It's something I'd have to get for the committee. I didn't bring it with me. So
Do you have, I mean, like, are we talking like 100 million, 10 million? Do you have any idea?
I guarantee you whatever number I give you,
It's going to be wrong. Yeah.
So,
No, I apologize. I'm just curious to know if, I mean, there just seems to, I guess, maybe you can answer this. There obviously has been given money to these universities, free money, government money, COVID money, correct? In the last 2 years.
Mr. Chairman, yes, they have received additional monies. In some cases, those federal monies have specific guidelines around how they are spent, but there has been a substantial infusion of additional federal monies.
So this 195 million that would be going into the Department of Commerce would, because their total budget usually is, and I apologize, what is it, 20-some million a year? The Commerce budget every year is what, 20?
I mean, it's closer to 110 million a year. So the Commerce budget is, if you look on page.
Well, there was a different graph I was looking at, and it wasn't 110 million. Let me
Look on page 5, and honestly, it gets a little bit difficult to read. That big, you see the FY 2021 actuals on page 5. That's 278.6 million. But the reason it's so large is largely a result of additional CARES Act funding. So CRF dollars, those were CRF, Coronavirus Relief Fund dollars that was flowing through the Department of Commerce. It's closer to 110 million.
Thank you. I looked at the wrong darn line. But 300% increase for this budget compared to what it has been. Okay. Thank you so much.
Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this is John Alcala.
Representative Akala.
Hey, thank you. Without being repetitive, I I also will oppose the motion for the same concerns that my colleague Representative Gardner had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Alcala. So we're back with your motion, Representative. Why don't you restate it? It's been a long time.
I move that we cut $160 million from this budget and retain and increase the program to Wichita State to 30 million, 35 million.
Has that been seconded? Okay, so it's we've talked it. It's been moved and seconded. Are we ready for a vote?
Yeah.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
No.
You can do anything you want. Representative, go ahead. Division. We're calling division. Those in favor, raise your hand. I'll give you one on that. And I just like to vote. You know what I'm saying. Anyway, and those opposed, that one, yeah. So that's done. Next, Mr. Gardner.
Okay, I have a motion. I have. Okay, I'll go ahead and I'll make a motion, and I just would point out I do have a motion, but I have an amendment that I'm going to offer, and that amendment is to increase from 20 to 35 million for the Wichita state. And then the remainder, I believe, would be 160 million would go to the regents to fund this matching program.
I second.
Question. So the question I have is the additional money you're asking for is to be taken out of what all of the pie it's already okay.
Yes, out of the 195 that's been appropriated or suggested in the budget, instead of 20, it goes to 35 for Wichita million, and the balance, which would be 160 million, would go to the regions for that grant program.
I second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry.
Can I call point of order and make sure that everybody that's voting is in the building? Is everybody that's voting in the building?
Sure. Tell me what room number you're in. I'll come in there right now.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
Mr. Chairman, I'm heading there right now. Hold on.
You do what? You do not have to, but you're welcome to come on in.
He wants to show up, but it's okay. He hasn't been here all year. He wants to come in, but it's okay.
Where's his office at? Is he on?
I don't know where he is. I bet he's very close, or he wouldn't have done that because he just doesn't hurry. He doesn't move real fast. What'd you say?
Oh, there's a community grant that was given at his district.
Oh, CBDG.
Yeah, and it was just going to overlap.
We may stay a little longer today.
Okay. I'm supposed to go to a committee. I was coming to your committee to introduce a bill. Is it at 3 or 3:30? Okay. Yeah, he's been sick.
Representative, I'm glad you're here. I'm always here. So we're down to now. Mr. Gardner.
Well,
Discussion.
yeah, we're discussing. You know, I've been, because of the questions we had a couple of days ago or whenever it was, I dug into this a little more, and I appreciate what Wichita State's doing. And I have no problem if they get an increase to do that. It sounds like the matching money is there and it's going to be a go. However, I don't know what all the other universities might have planned for their economic development statement presentation to the Board of Regents. And so I'm going to oppose this simply because of the additional money that's going when there is a process that the Regents set up to share it. And they were going to be reviewing all of the proposals and making recommendations to Commerce. And so I don't want to get us in the middle of that. So I'm going to oppose this. And I hope that Wichita State gets all they need out of this funding. But I'm going to be a no on this vote.
Any other discussion before we vote? Okay, those in favor of the Representative Gardner's motion, what? Yes, I can't, but Mr. Representative Gardner can, or somebody can.
I'll try it one more time, Mr. Chairman. I believe I was going to increase from 20 million to 35 million for the aircraft or for Wichita State University. And then that would lower the 195 million to 160 million going to the Regents matching grant program.
Those in favor, just raise your hand. We can get on with it. Opposed? Yes, I'm voting for Gardner's amendment. Okay. Let's thank you, Rand. Thank you, Representative. Okay. Are you ready to work any more on this? Yeah. Thank you, sir.
I hate to get wrapped around the axle here, but an issue was brought to my attention that I wanted to address before the committee. We had some testimony that was submitted, I think, via email. It wasn't in our packet, from Smoky Hills Public Television. And I was going to request either with staff, I'm not really sure what the language needs to be, but they requested that we strike a proviso that was in the budget last year. It was placed in conference committee that limits the monies appropriated to public broadcasting stations that are looking to move locations. And that's something that they are looking at doing. And I wanted to see if the committee would entertain a motion to go ahead and strike that provision that was in the proviso. It's in law last year, just to allow them to proceed and look for a different location without any penalty.
Location in Kansas or just location like down the street?
The proviso, as I understand it, and I apologize, I don't have the language in front of me, but it was within the city limits was okay. But if you're looking to move outside the city limits or to a different city or town, that, yes, within the state.
Within the state, though, keep it in the state.
Yes, but to a different city.
Mr. Chairman, actually, I got that document on my desk. I was going to bring that up today. I can go get it if you want the proper language. I do support that, and I second that motion.
Discussion?
Yeah.
Representative Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I used to be on, go out to Bunker Hill and be on their PBS station when I was in Salina. But I think there's more to this than I think we need to maybe just sort of sit back, find out what's going on. I think there are some conflicts out there with their board. And I think it's really an issue that I understand what they're trying to do, but I think they ought to come to a solution between their board and remedy their situation out there before they come to us and ask for a proviso, Representative Smith.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. The letter that I was referring to was submitted by the Smoky Hills PBS board chairman, and we have listed in that. I mean, I'm not familiar with all of the what appears to be maybe some local drama, but this letter is submitted by the board. I'm not aware of any of the other issues, though.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I thought the broadcasters were listed in that letter too. Were they, or were they not, Adam? No. They weren't? Okay.
So, Representative?
I have a question for Dylan. This was added in conference committee last year. And I want to know if it's still effective. I mean, is it a 1-year proviso? And what do you have the wording on that proviso? Was it for 23 or 21 or what year? And
To the best of my knowledge, and I just started looking at this a few minutes ago, that was revised. Technically, it was actually added during the regular budget deliberation and then revised in order to restrict the impacts of it during conference, as you correctly note. It only runs through fiscal year 2022, so that would end in about 4 months. Is when the restrictions would fall off, and the language is that during the fiscal, no money shall be expended from the above agency, from Public Broadcasting Council funds that are coming from the state, from the EIF portion that comes from the state. All right. If a station moved to a different city or has a plan to move to a different city approved by the board of directors or management of such public broadcasting station during such fiscal year, which is this, fiscal year 2022. At this point, and the governor's recommendation, there isn't any additional language for fiscal year 2023 that I'm aware of.
so that means that it's in effect until 23. But maybe we still may want to make our recommendation because I'm sure the
Chairman, I stand correct.
committee can also, appropriations committee can change that if they want to have the debate.
Mr. Deere?
I very much apologize. This is the danger of speaking off the cuff. It does go through fiscal year 2023, and there's an additional proviso on the back of the Department of Commerce budget. So that stretches through fiscal year 2023. From last year. So,
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm going to withdraw my second. I thought it was pretty cut and dry. I'm a supporter of public broadcasting, and I thought it meant more money into them relocating. So I'll withdraw my second because I don't know the other side of it then.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just renew my motion to strike the proviso that's existing currently and move my motion.
I'll abstain.
Mr. Chairman, did I not make a motion to pass this budget out favorably? And I had a second. I'm going to have to renew my motion. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that. Thank you. So I will renew a new motion basically to pass out the commerce budget as presented, favorably as amended.
And if I am correct on the previous motion, it was passed that we have 35 million for Wichita State University and leave the 160 million in the commerce budget.
Thank you.
So therefore, at this time, I would move that we strike the 160 million and leave the 35 for Wichita State.
Second. No, it's not a different motion.
Okay. Well,
Yeah. So that's different from your motion.
oh, yes, but I thought we had something similar earlier from Representative Lee, so that's okay. We can take this up again. So 35 going to Wichita, 35 million, and you're striking the rest of the 160 going to the regions.
Correct. Division on Mr. Representative Newland's amendment motion. Those for it, and then those against it.
Okay.
Okay. So we're back, as always, to Representative Gardner.
As always.
Respectively.
Well, I guess I will read my original motion.
Okay.
Everybody understand what we're doing now. Okay.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those against say nay.
Nay.
I'm going to say the ayes have it. And if you would like division, we can do it. Say the ayes have it. Thank you.
Motion passes.
Yep. So that's
That's what you wanted to.
What I wanted? Absolutely what I wanted.
Well, that's what you wanted to strike.
So wait a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, at this time, to save time for later, I know it's not normal that we do this all the time, but since it's a smaller budget, I would move that we would pass out favorably the Citizens Utility Ratepayer Board fund.
any discussion? That's a second.